Here we are at trail number 9. We're going to talk about the core. And as we talk about it, we're going to start with the body. And I thought, okay, what better way to do this than to bring back a picture I took this summer when I was off with some friends. And so here's a picture of me and my body. The wig is cool, kind of looks nice on me, doesn't it? And has that little kind of look thing going on. Yeah, that's actually a lot of you are kind of saying, I don't, okay, it's not me. Okay, it's a statue of David. King David of the nation of Israel, made by Michelangelo. And to be honest with you, we don't really know what he looks like. We don't really know what kind of man David was, but when Michelangelo wanted to portray him, he wanted to portray him as somebody that had an appearance that was strong, had an appearance that was healthy, had an appearance in which it was working in a great way to be the man he was supposed to be, you know? Now, actually, the king before him was a guy by the name of Saul. Now, Saul was this king who was head and shoulders taller than anybody else in the kingdom. It's like a dandruff shampoo, completely higher than any other guy, and it's basically, he's the athlete of the day. He's making it all, whatever the big sports team would have been, he would have been at the top of the whole recruiting phase. Saul, however, was a man that had a physical appearance, but his core was not intact. David, on the other hand, the guy behind me that Michelangelo made, was a man that, although was probably smaller, in fact, it was said in the Bible, it actually said he had a ruddy appearance. I have no idea what ruddy means, but it probably is this guy that was just kind of weathered, kind of looking. When his brothers were considered to be the king, because Samuel had come to the house to pick a king to follow after King Saul, the older, stronger warrior brothers were rejected, not rejected because they weren't valuable. It just got to, they're not the ones I want. And then God made a statement in 1 Samuel 16 where he says, you guys look on the outward appearance, I look on the heart. I look at the inside. And so what you see reflected is a total man as far as what Michelangelo thought of David. A man that does not just physically have his act together, but all parts of who we are. What we're going to look at today is our bodies. And we're going to look at the body and what we want to have, what we want to be like, and how that would work. And so, as we look at it, consider this. What would it be like if you had the body you always wanted to have? How would it be? Now, there are 3 types of us whenever we talk about bodies. Now, I got to be honest with you. This is a tricky area, right? If you're messing around on your mate, nobody knows that unless you come out and tell them. Right? You could be cheating on your income taxes. You could be cheating your boss, and nobody knows it unless you say something. I could be lying right now, and unless you could really figure out the facts, I can hide it. But your body, it's impossible to hide. How your hair is, what height you are, what weight you are, all those things are very, very difficult to hide. So as a result of that, we've developed kind of 3 types of guys whenever we deal with our bodies. The first type of guy is a guy who goes, I like my body. I like who I am. I like how I move. As a matter of fact, I like the concept of spandex male because I would look stinking good in it, you know? He's a guy, I go to the gym, and for the longest time I was in the gym, I just do the machines, you know, because they were kind of safe, and the older women would do those, and little kids, so I figured I could do those things. And then my trainer started having me go into the weight room, you know, where the free weights are. Whole nother world there. And there, you have to make sounds. Sounds that make sure everybody notices you. And the coolest part about it is, when you get done with your weights, you drop them on the ground. So everybody turns and looks and goes, whoa, look at the guy. I'm sitting next to this guy, and he's on the bench, and he's lifting these mammoth dumbbells, you know. I have my, 15-pounders, you know, so when I drop mine, it goes clink, you know, and theirs goes boom. Those are the guys that, you know who you are. You're excited about your body. You're excited about the appearance of your body, and you want everybody to know it. But that's about all you are. You know, it's sort of, you're the guy, my sons have trained as athletes, and when they get to college level, I mean, they're training hours a day, hours, literally. And everything's about their body being at the peak of its physical conditioning, but it's also very difficult to keep everything else in balance, relationships and academics and everything else when you're training at that kind of level. If you're that guy, it's all about how you look. It's all about how you walk in. So unlike me, you don't have to hold your stomach in. It's already in. You have a six-pack. I have a keg. You have a six-pack, and it just kind of ripples through, and everybody notices it. And that's who you are, right? There's another type of guy, and that type of guy is a guy that it's sort of eat, drink, and be merry, because you know what? I'm throwing out the body anyway. You know? Now, You could be young, you could be old, you could be in any kind of direction of life, and you might even look like the body's okay, or you might not care. But the fact is that the body is something you use, very much as you would like a bottle of water, that when the water was gone, you'd chuck the bottle away. I shouldn't say water, because you guys that don't care aren't drinking water, right? It's one of those areas where you say, I just am disposable, sort of. So we eat, drink, and be merry. Now, for guys that are not connected to their spiritual side, that's sort of the attitude. If you're connected to your spiritual side, we sort of say, well, all the bad things that the shadow drives, I will avoid, but it's okay for us to overeat. It's like we go out to a buffet or a smorgasbord and we eat an entire calorie proportion for a week in one setting. And we think it's okay. And there's a bunch of guys that are like that. And one of the things that when we're like that is that it's sort of like people look at you and they're judging because they don't know how to make who you are and how you view yourself and the abuse that you kind of bring upon yourself. There's a third guy. I would have to call him more the balanced guy. The third guy is a guy that says, you know what, I want to have my body at the best shape it could be, but it's one of 6 parts of who I am. It isn't what I live and die by, although obviously physically that's where your heart remains beating or not beating, but my total being is intact. It's those men that become very balanced. And so whenever we talk about the core, and whenever we talk about one part of the core, we're talking about balanced men. So how are you doing in this? How are you doing at being a balanced guy? And so don't get overwhelmed if we hit one today that you're not as balanced in. I know it's going to be harder to hide, but I want you to work at balancing it and bring it into all parts of the 6. I don't want you to make it the only part, and I don't want you to ignore it. I want to find it in balance. All right, so let's walk through. Grab your books and let's open up to Roman number 1. What does a knight need to recognize regarding his body? What does he need to recognize? Okay, A, success in leadership is often contingent on bodily awareness, conditioning, and energy. Under the Bush administration, Condoleezza Rice was the Secretary of State. And what she would do is she would get up every morning at 4:30. This is a massive leader around the world from the United States government. She'd get up every morning at 4:30 and exercise. She would do it because in order for her to be effective leadership, she had to keep her energy level high. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the governor of California. He got there not because he's a good communicator. If you ever heard him talk, I don't even know how he got a role in a movie anywhere, but he got there because he works at making his body, which is he's tall, he is fit. He actually works out for 45 minutes every day doing cardio, and in the afternoon does weights for 30 minutes every day of his life, and that's where he gets that way. A CEO that's the head of the corporation involved in Hershey Foods in the middle of Pennsylvania. He was one of the most strong leaders, O'Connell's his name, was one of the strongest leaders listed in almost all the magazines, but his team said the one weakness he had was his energy seemed to go down. And he took him serious. And he decided that every day he would exercise for an hour. Not only did that cause him to lose 40 pounds that he was overweight, but it actually caused his energy level to stay high all the time. Leadership and body care is part of what we're doing. In fact, most leaders, most CEOs, most people ahead are very conscious of time that they're spending working on their body. It's funny, I've been in transition. I've never been an athlete. I don't really have the athletic concepts that are sort of instinctive within me, genetically there, I don't have those. But it's interesting that I've been, as I've gotten older, realizing I need to be very deliberate about spending time in the gym, doing cardio and all that. And I have people pushing me to do that because, to be honest with you, I don't wake up in the morning going, yay! But it's part of what we need to be as a guy if we're going to be balanced in all 6 areas. Look at B. B is, he has to keep physically active to be ready for the challenges found within the forest. One of the problems that you and I face is that within the forest that we live in, within the world that we have to dwell in, the fact is that it keeps changing and throwing stuff at us. And if you're not ready physically for it, see, you can't know when a crisis is about to come. You can't know when something is about to take place that's going to change and alter your thinking. It could be a health crisis of a family member. It could be a country crisis. It could be a world crisis. It could be a weather crisis. It could be almost anything you can imagine that will suddenly hit you, and your physical conditioning will carry you through the extra energy that's needed during those days. So we'll have to keep that in mind. Look at C. His body is a direct representation of who he is and how he and others view himself. Have you ever noticed that when you're not confident of you, it changes? I got to be honest with you. I love having my shirt tail out. I guess you've noticed that when you've been with me all this time. I love having it out for two reasons. Number one, if you're not quite as six-packy as you should be, kind of covers it. But far more importantly for me, it makes me feel comfortable all the time. So Lynn and I will have this debate. I'll say to her when we're going out to eat, what kind of restaurant are we going to? Is it a shirt tail in or a shirt tail out? Because I know the kind of evening I'm about to have is depending on which location of my shirt tail is. I was speaking to a group of guys one morning about 5:30 in the morning, and I just, for the most part, as a way of life, this is what I speak like, wherever I am, right? But I'm trying to be very much aware of the fact that it makes a first impression, how people view me, and how do I feel. And I have to find that balance. I get there at 5:30 in the morning, going to speak to a whole group of guys, and all their shirt tails are in. I have no idea what happened in this town. Are they all accountants? I have no idea what the problem is. But they're all the shirt tails in. And I'm sitting there going, I don't even know if I can speak with my shirt tail in. And so I tucked my shirt tail in. I tucked it in because I wanted them to feel like, okay, they could handle what I had to say. I didn't want to lose it for my shirt tail out. But you know what? You and I have to find this balance all the time about our appearance. When you walk in, people are aware. Your body is what they see and what we measure each other by. All right? Look at the next one. The key areas tied to the body which are important to a man are, and there are several of them here that we want to look at. A, self-awareness. Are you aware of how you look? Have you actually checked in the mirror? Have you actually brushed your teeth? How aware are you of your body experience? Because other people have to encounter it. Do you know that for the most part we forget about it? We're not looking at us, we're looking at everybody else, right? So you have to be kind of aware. How body aware are you? B, what is your self-image? How do you like you? Do you want to hang out with you? Are you comfortable with you? And that's actually going to be kind of how you're feeling about your body, how much energy you have. All those things are part of it. Do you feel good about you? Do you like you? And you know what? If you don't like who you are, it becomes very evident in your demeanor. How much smiling you're doing, how much you're frowning. It actually takes apparently more work to frown than it does to smile, but we sometimes move in that direction. Why? Because I don't like me sometimes. Look at C. Self-care. How are you doing at caring for yourself? How are you doing in saying, okay, am I taking care of myself the way I should? Am I eating right? Do you know that white bread is not as good for you as whole wheat bread? And yet I thought that was the way God made bread. I thought bread just came up out of the ground. It was white. Now they put like 14 grains in bread, as if the one grain wasn't enough. And you know what's important? It really is a difference of what kind of bread you eat. It actually is. And so becoming aware of what you're putting in, self-care, decisions that you make are all part of how we take care of our body. Look at the last one. Self-discipline. Self-discipline. The word almost makes me tired. Self-discipline makes it feel like, okay, I gotta work at this. Yeah, I do. You know what? There are 6 parts of your core. None of them, other than the shadow, become natural anymore. So you have to learn to work at it. And so self-discipline is saying, okay, I'm going to make sure that that's part of it. When I mentioned those CEOs or government leaders that I mentioned earlier that are exercising, that's self-discipline. It's one of the areas you actually admire that in an athlete, you admire it in anybody that's in a public image of people, that they have some degree of self-discipline. Self-discipline in every area, how they control their being, their body. All right? Look at number 3. What are the side effects when our body is not functioning up to our full potential? A, we are less adventurous and thus avoid healthy risks. When you're not functioning at your fullest potential, it's really true, you are physically less adventurous. Now let me tell you about my wife. My wife is she is an athlete through and through. That's where the guys got all their athletic genes, came from Lynn. She loves to drive herself. She loves to train. She loves to climb mountains. 15,000-foot mountains in Colorado are her favorite ones to climb. Now, you understand, I like to fly over 15,000-foot mountains and look down on them and say, aren't they pretty? Climbing them isn't me, right? So she was just out in Colorado climbing a mountain with some friends, and you know, it's where it's even 15,000 feet. You're even having a little trouble sucking air at that particular point. And I go, why do you want to do that? Because it's just so gorgeous. It's such a great feeling, right? We were hiking, and as we were hiking, we went through this kind of cool journey where we said, you know, why don't we just climb this waterfall area? And it was about a 1,500-foot climb, right? So I decided that I would do the gentlemanly thing. I would follow her up for two reasons. First one is because I love walking behind her. She is gorgeous, hot, it's a much more fun body to follow than anybody else's. So I love that, right? But number two, I didn't want her to see me sweating. I didn't want her to see me sucking air at a 1,500-foot climb. She's living this adventure because she just did a 15,000-foot climb, and I'm just doing, you know, me, right? And so it affects the level of adventure. So guess what we're doing? We're going to climb a mountain together. So guess what I got to do? I got to get to the point where I can keep up with her, which I think if I train for 4.5 years, we should be about ready to do it. You know, and that's one of the joys of taking care of yourself. And when you don't, man, you cut back on adventures. Look at B. When you cut back on adventures, we do this. We are often embarrassed and as a result initiate fewer relationships. If you find yourself wearing sweatpants all the time, sitting there in front of the TV with a TV tray and not wanting anybody to come over and hang over at the house, you don't even clean up anymore. There's just litter on the floor. You know, what's happened, right? You've kind of lost your sense of your body. And so what we do when we get like that, guys, we get in trouble. We don't want to build relationships. You're built for relationships. All 6 parts of your core come together. Why do you have armor, right? To build relationships. And then to remove it, why do you have chainmail? It's so that your belief can make a difference in people's lives. Why do you have a core? Because you're valuable. You have something to give. But what happens? When you don't feel good about yourself, you kind of back off, and it doesn't work very well. Look at C. We make excuses which infer that we are actually preparing to fail and refusing to learn. One of the things that I think is so interesting is that we tend to say, you know what, it's my genetics. You know they came up with a fat gene? I'm not kidding. Scientists have found a fat gene. Way to go, dude. It's not my fault, right? It's the fat gene. That's what does it, right? We love finding an excuse. It's not my fault. Why? What's going on? Guys, be very, very careful about this whole thing. It's an excuse that we say, I don't have to take care of all parts of my core. I can ignore this one part. No, you can't. Your core is made up of 6. You ignore one, you're in trouble, right? Your body, your physical appearance, and how you take care of it. And it actually is the only thing that houses who you and I are. Look at D. We are less confident, underline less. Therefore, we create fewer goals. And underline fewer. And I think less and fewer is sort of the way we go with this whole area. We tend to have less of everything when we deny one part of our core. And so if you're not having your body where it could be, now it doesn't have to be the peak of physical conditioning, just be very much aware that you're taking care of it because it moves very, very healthy and makes the rest of the core easier to work on. So you got to keep it in balance, all right? E, we lack the energy to achieve and consequently we fulfill our manhood calling less often. Have you ever seen the movie Rocky? In the very first movie, Rocky, before he gets his face beat into a pulp in the final fight of the thing, he decides he's going to train to fight this champion, Apollo Creed. And he goes to train. And the very first sequence of him training is him sucking air, barely able to climb the steps of the Philadelphia Art Museum, and then just walking back exhausted. Later on in the movie, after lots and lots of training, he just flies through this training and is in top physical condition, and he's able to do what he was designed to do. One of the things I think we need to understand is that the energy to achieve what we have is going to come from us training. What are the keys to self-discipline? You have to do some things. Reserve time for the following couple areas. A, reflect. You're going to hear this word a lot from us. You're going to need to think in terms of reflecting as a way of life. It's part of just engaging all that you are to say, okay, how am I doing in this area? If you ignore it, it doesn't go away and it doesn't get better. We naturally degenerate physically. You know you shrink, right? I used to be 6 foot, not anymore. As I'm moving my way back down, as I get older, your body shrinks. It's going to happen. If you think that your skin is looking really good now, it will wrinkle. You'll need to iron it at some time, because what happens is we degenerate. We don't get better naturally, we degenerate. So you got to spend some time and reflect on it. And B, you got to focus. Teach yourself to keep your eyes on what your priorities are. One of the hardest things for me is I'm a pretty busy guy. Actually, I like busyness. I'm not just busy in work, I'm also busy with my sons and busy with my wife. Lynn and I spend a lot of time together, my boys and I spend time together, and I work a lot. So I have to be very, very careful about my priorities. Because if I'm not careful about my priority, guess which one, which I don't do naturally, gets pushed off in the corner? It's my body, right? It's physically training, watching what you eat. You're eating on the run, you're not thinking about it, you're doing all those things. Guys, we have to keep things in priority, because we're 6 parts. C, work. Learn to work smarter, not harder, through careful planning. You know, I think that one of the things that I love is for you and I to learn how to maximize the moments that we have. My trainer says to me, park further away from where you want to go, and just that alone will help you. Well, and I'm trying to get there faster and do everything else, but he's saying, think about everything all the time. Think about all parts of who you are and what you are, not just getting there on time to do the job, but also that if you take another 15 seconds to walk across a parking lot, you're going to add to your health. There's that kind of a thing where you and I start to work, but we work harder in all the areas to be smarter, right? Maximize the moments. Look at D. Be vigilant. You'll be able to spot the useless actions and distractions slowing you down. You're going to have to stop every once in a while and just say, okay, I got to look around. Every once in a while, not just being reflective, but I mean literally stop and just say, okay, what are the things that I've added into me that I don't need? When we climb mountains, according to Lynn, you're very deliberate about everything you take up on that mountain. Everything. Because everything you take up, you have to bring down. Everything you take up, you're going to have that weight going with you. And so you're very, very careful, as opposed to you just throw a couple things in and you're just going to hang out for a few hours, right? We have to be vigilant about the care of our bodies. It becomes extremely important. All right, now, what are the areas we should look at? All right, there's some things that we want to look at that are the use of some things. Number one, obviously, look at your use of food. How do you use food? Do you live to eat, or do you eat to live? You know what I mean, right? When you're depressed, do you just throw food in? You know? You got to look at the use of food. Is it comfort? My problem is sometimes food is comfort to me. Food is what makes me I reward myself for being a hard worker. You know, and so sometimes you have to be very careful about how you use that. So be careful with the use of food. It sounds so obvious, but make sure you're not just rewarding yourself. Make sure it's not the thing you can get away with. It'll make a huge difference. Look at also this. Look at your use of alcohol, tobacco, legal or illegal drugs. One of the things when you look at that list, there's a couple on here that probably I can't think of any good reason for it. Tobacco probably is never going to be helpful to your physical body. For the most part, illegal drugs are not going to be helpful to your physical body. Legal drugs and alcohol, you're okay with that until you start to abuse them, right? I mean, that's where we get into that trouble. So what you have to do is start to think about your use of it. Are you medicating? And by medicating, are you not just medicating the problem, but you're medicating your emotions. You're medicating who you are. You know, when I talk to guys that have struggled with drug or alcohol abuse, they'll end up talking to me about the fact that it's a numbing thing. That it just helps them to get through some of the pain, some of the wounds, some of the stuff in their lives. You need to stop every once in a while, guys, and say, okay, how am I doing in the use of these areas? Well, how am I doing with food? How am I doing with alcohol and tobacco? And how am I doing with drugs, both legal and illegal? How am I doing with that? It actually impacts a great deal what happens with your body. I had a friend of mine that was talking to me the other day. He's went through a business downturn, and he was talking to me about whether or not he should go on some antidepressants because he's been really, really having trouble sleeping because of the business downturn. You know what? There's not a lack of wisdom in saying, how do I take this carefully? The thing I loved about it was he was asking good questions on the way in. You know why? Because he wanted to stay in balance. Yeah, he had to settle this out for a while. A lot of us, though, we're not asking those good questions. We're just taking them to numb. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't do what you think it's going to do. So when it comes to your body, think about the use of certain things. Think about our sexuality. I love the fact that our sexuality is something that we actually abuse our bodies and then try to overcompensate. So we're getting all kinds of products. The whole world of Viagra and Extends and all of that is a bunch of guys that have not taken care of their body that now want to make sure they can keep performing because we put a huge premium on sexuality. By the way, we haven't put a premium on relationships, we put it on sexuality. But a lot of you struggle in how you're functioning sexually, and it has a lot to do with what you've been doing with your body. It also has something to do with the other parts of the core. But when you go down this road, guys, we love to put stuff into our system to make up for discipline, hard work, and all the things that we need to do to make sure that we're taking care of us, all right? Look at D. You're going to have to exercise. I hate to tell you, but you got to look at your use of exercise. Are you spending time both in physical exercise that's building up muscle, but also cardio that's just kind of taking care of your heart and doing all that? And exercise, for the most part, is a dirty word to some guys. Some guys, they love it. It's actually what they hide behind. Some guys, like that guy, guys in the first category I gave you, is a guy who's all about training and all about himself. It's not about this core. It's just about this one area. But there's also other guys that, man, we just don't even want to think about exercising. You're going to have to think about your use of exercise, or you're going to miss, especially as you get older, you're going to miss so many parts of being all that you can be. So we have to stop and take a look at that. E, look at the safety measures of our lives. What safety measures do you put in place? And here's what we mean by that. There's an acronym right there. It says, Yano, you are not omnipotent. Because you don't know what's about to happen, you got to put your seatbelt on. When my son was found with brain cancer, he had his first brain surgery, there's a guy in a trauma unit room next to him who he ended up dying the next day, a young man who had gone through the windshield in a head-on crash. His airbag deployed. He actually would have been fine if he had a seatbelt on, but he flew over the airbag on his way out of the car. Now, if you think about that whole concept, guys, because we're not omnipotent, we got to think about safety. And so start being cautious. It's probably not good to drive and text. I know that the police say it's not good, but it probably isn't. You have to start thinking about safety in all kinds of areas. Be aware of things in your home and everything else. And the last one is I want you to think about this, a medical professional. What do you think about the medical profession? Do you know that prostate cancer is more easy to treat and more curable than breast cancer? And yet men are far more likely to have that exam taken because we just don't like to be poked, and so we're far less to do that than the other. Guys, there are certain preventative things you can be doing. They'll just help your heart and everything else. Every once in a while, guys, we just got to stop and think, why do I want to be around? Because the world needs nights, that's why. We need nights with our core intact, making a huge difference. And so we better start thinking about these areas and how we're using them, what we're doing with them. All right? All right. Why is it important to the world for a knight to take care of his body? Here's what the world needs. We need physical longevity and strength. When my kids think of me, they think of me being strong. Not necessarily physically. I think almost all of them can beat me in arm wrestling now. I just arm wrestled my 16-year-old the other day, and I'm not kidding. I think he beat me. Now, I have to say I think he beat me. Now, here's my problem. When they were young, I would always let them beat me at certain times. So there are certain times when I start arm wrestling, and I don't think much of it until I'm all of a sudden in trouble. I go, whoa, 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 I've been playing here, and now I'm in trouble. So I don't know if we had started again if he would have, but he's probably at that place now where I'm going to lose to him. But he needs me to be strong. Physically, emotionally, total core, spiritually strong, right? He needs me to be that. You and I need to be that way. We need to understand that longevity is in some respects, even ours to do. And I know some of you even have family history that doesn't include longevity, but you can alter that by being careful of different areas of our lives. Something else we can do, guys, when we take care of ourselves, giving the world the nights it needs. It'll be protection of others on physical, psychological, and spiritual levels. If you ever stop and just think about a veteran, veterans are one of the people that I honor the most. Whatever country you're in, people that have been willing to sacrifice themselves so that you can be safe, especially in the U.S. culture where for the most part we have sort of helped as best we can to somehow or another protect others, right? And that obviously has not always been the case, but The vast majority of the time it is. And I admire a veteran, and I admire a veteran because he takes the very essence of his being and he says, I will put it on the line for you. We just had a young man, 19 years of age, die in one of the conflicts around the world in our community. And when we went through that and when we experienced that as a community, we mourned the loss of this young man, right? But he said, you know what, my body, part of my core, is designed for protection. So are the other parts of your core. They need to be intact. If all you are is strong, we saw in Samson, he was strong, but he just didn't have the rest of his core intact, and he didn't protect what he was designed to protect. Guys, you're around for protection. You're designed to exist for a long period of time. Look at the next one. Another thing we're supposed to be. Willingness to encourage and help others. One of the things that I really love is the idea that we can help along others by saying, okay, I'm going to help you to be what you're designed to be, and I'm going to be there to do that. As my children grow and they get married and then they have grandchildren, they want me to come alongside and help them raise those kids. They want me to come alongside and help, well, actually I'm going to spoil those kids, but it doesn't matter. They want me to come alongside and encourage, be willing to help. See, guys, they want you around, really. Especially when you become the knight you were designed to be. Trust me, people want you around. Look at D. Leadership and completion of important environmental tasks. What that means is this, guys. It's when we have a forest to deal with and care for, the older you are, the wiser you have, the greater your leadership. And if you stay around longer, you're going to help sway the forest more. My impact on the forest when I was 22 was significant, I guess. But I had so many parts of my core messed up that I missed a lot of opportunities. But now at my age, I'm fully aware of the fact that every day I have a chance to impact the forest, the culture around me, right? Every day I have a chance to take those stones in my life, place them in the river, and start to change the direction of the flow of how men are perceived. Leadership comes the longer you live, and the more you practice the principles, the more you become what this world is dying for. Look at E. Modeling of a relaxed and peaceful lifestyle. You're going to have to do that, you know. You know what? Change sometimes is all you need to do. Just change something, and it's amazing. It's sometimes as good as relaxing as anything else. You'll just stop and change what you've been doing for a little bit. And sometimes that's just modeling to a world that says, okay, how do I settle down? How do I relax? We live in a very tense world. We can teach them that. Model how to relax. Model not how to be lazy, but actually how to think differently and to act differently and to be different. One of the coolest parts about what we're talking about with your core is when your core gets intact, that Rubik's Cube all comes together, you and I begin to make an incredible difference in the world which we live in. The body's one of them. One last one. Warriors. The warrior side. The reality is that warriors are needed for many of our freedoms to exist. You're going to leave here now and you're going to go into your campfire. When you go into your campfire, there's going to be a group of guys that are going to need you to call them up, to fight for them. So I'm not just talking about warriors who are soldiers, which we honor and we appreciate, or policemen or firemen or emergency personnel that help to protect us. We're actually talking about each other. So when you go into your campfire and you start to value the guy next to you, call him up, encourage him. If he's physically out of shape, don't beat him up, don't laugh at him, help him. If he's struggling with an area, come alongside. See, what we do in fighting for each other is one of the neatest opportunities. See, if you learn to fight for other men, they'll fight for you, and they'll encourage you to be able to fight for the people that you've been surrounded with, from your wives, children, needy individuals, all those that you have to care for along the way. Now, what we're talking about is one area. But it's an important area because it's one of 6. And if you don't bring those into balance, this area, connected with the other ones, you're going to miss out. Now, this is just the physical side of your body. We're going to be talking about your brain that thinks and feels. We're going to be talking about understanding more and more about our genetics and our instincts. There are parts to this, number 1. But always remember, as we deal with this, there are 5 other parts that when you bring them into balance, you and I become the men we're supposed to be. So what do? All right. You can't hide, right? Can't hide where you are on this one. Go into your campfire, spend some time with each other, and start to say together, let's bring this one area into balance so we can impact the rest. Enjoy the journey. It will make all the difference to a world that's desperately in need of knights. Thanks for being with us.